invite Sanket Dhurandhar. He's joining us from Mumbai. Sanket is the cloud AI country plan leader at Microsoft. Through his expertise in the field of AI, he helps organizations, government, and other communities across India to focus on sustainable economic growth and realize their full potential. And we also have Aleksa Gordic joining us from Serbia. Aleksa is a research engineer at Deepminder and the man behind the YouTube channel, the AI Epiphany. Thank you both for joining us.
Thanks. Pleasure to join both of you for today's discussion.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to it.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks for the invite.
Great. Okay, the stuff on ethics and AI obviously can fill many, many books. So how can we shape this conversation on this monumental topic? And, as I told you folks before, I'm going to start with a personal meditation or an open-ended question. Sanket and Aleksa, do you use any AI tech in your personal or professional lives that makes you question what you're using every once in a while? Here's my theory. My theory is that we all do that. And one of the examples from my life is that I use facial recognition technology to sort my photographs, either on my phone or on my computer or through social media apps. And it becomes very difficult to opt out of these technologies, even if we had misgivings. Because the same facial recognition tech can be misused and continues to be misused in different parts of the world. So Aleksa, starting with you first, and then Sanket, do you have examples from your own life that you want to share?
Sure. So I guess the first thing that pops to my mind would be recommender systems, because I guess that's the single piece of AI technology currently nowadays that's having the biggest impact on our lives, arguably, I'd say, because like we're all talking about like self-driving cars, etc., but those are like still like to come yet, whereas we're all interacting with recommender systems like be it Twitter, be it like Facebook feed, be it like YouTube, whatnot. So yeah, basically there are pros and cons to this technology. The pro is definitely that without Aleksas, we would not be able to, I wouldn't be able to kind of find the relevant pieces of information in the ocean of information we have today. Whereas on the con side, obviously, like stuff like bias, and I'll give a simple example here. For example, when I listen to YouTube, sometimes like the Aleksas is only recommending me music that I've liked already. So it's, I guess, a subtle exploitation bias. And that's a simple one, but like you could take that to extreme. And if you have a malicious actor controlling the platform itself, then that person or that group could kind of push the propaganda or whatnot, like to the like audience of that platform. Like those would be some examples that like I can list more.
Yeah, I mean, and those are examples that we are familiar with at Boom because we work in the fact-checking space and in the addressing the polarization that we see kind of space. Sanket, your turn.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would rather say that just look around yourself, right? Just have a 360-degree view of wherever you might be. And the way things have grown these days, right? There is not even a single piece across or around us which is not using AI. Aleksa mentioned about the recommended system, right? I'll just extend on that, right? To run the recommended system, or just when you say a recommended system, there are so many instances within the recommended system which are used. Just open an app, Netflix or maybe YouTube, and in the homepage, while we generically say that it's a recommended system, but then within that there are so many instances which talks about what is the priority in which you are seeing the video, in what sequence it has been displayed, with how much duration it has been seen. And the beauty of this is all which is very contextual. You open the same app in the morning, it will show you something different. You open it in the evening, it will show you different. You open up in the night, it shows you something different. What I'm coming to is the high level of customization. So it is recommendation is one, and then you have the customization which has happened on that, right? Another example which I really loved is that the way overall ecosystem of recruitment has grown. We have seen instances where typically the resumes which typically are sitting in India, right? You all can relate with me. India is a land of ITS, right? The BPO boom has kind of grown the Indian economy so much across the globe. Now, what is a kind of an offshoot of that is the number of resume which the HR function has to go through, right? I have personally spoken to HR, and they handle something like more than 1 million resume a year. And until now, till the time the AI was not grown, somebody has to actually go and eyeball every resume one by one. But now the AI system has come in, and AI system does the preliminary analysis of the resumes, and that has actually helped to not only be the HR function be more relevant and more efficient, but at the same time, it has actually helped to make sure that the smaller nuances of the resume, or a candidate has done something really good, but then in the eyeballing process somebody might miss that, but AI won't miss that, right? So the right candidate gets married to the right profile, and that's how the overall rejection ratio has come down, as well as it's good for the candidate also, because they don't get unnecessarily called up for the interview, and they don't end up in a situation where they, hey, we thought you are good in this technology, but now we see that you're not in good. So that uneven experience for the candidate is also gone down, right? So that's a wonderful practical example which I have seen.
Right. I mean, I was going to ask you about a not so positive example, but I just, this might be a good example, good time to bring up this Pew research that asked a question in June 2021. And the question it asked 602 people. Many of them were technology innovators, developers, business and policy leaders, researchers, and activists. So out of this 602 people, they asked this question: by 2030, will most of the AI systems being used by organizations of all sorts employ ethical principles focused primarily on the public good? And the answer to that was, in response, 68% chose the option declaring that ethical principles focused primarily on the good will not be employed in most AI systems by 2030. The question for both of you: A, does this surprise you? B, what is your personal opinion? I'll start
Yeah,
with you, Sanket, and then go to Alexa.
sure, right. I would say I'm not surprised, right? Because what has happened is that in the hype cycle around AI, the ethics and legality somewhere just got left behind, right? Because the way technology boom happened on the AI, you mentioned about face recognition. Now, while face recognition is good, right? But then we recently saw advertisement from one of the FMCG company in India, where face recognition and the facial analysis was used, right? On face of it, it looks so wonderful. Yes, the art of possibility is so much, right? But just think of that. What could be the downside of that? Somebody is not endorsing something, and then suddenly that pops up, right? So that ethical aspect is somewhere getting lost. But I would say that the time horizon, what we mentioned about till 2030, right? So it's a good 9 years, and I'm sure industry, I am practically seeing that within Microsoft, we have been advocating this for last 5 years, and I'm seeing the other industries also waking up to the fact that it is not about the adoption of the technology, but then how ethically we adopt that, right? Because Alex mentioned about a very good point of bias. Now, AI system is good only depending upon the data what it sees. As a human, I see and I pursue data, and I somehow consume that data at later point in time. But in AI system, whatever data you see, that's the only horizon that system has. So it's all about making sure that fundamental principle of garbage in, garbage out doesn't apply, and there are checks and balances to do that. There are tools now available which will help you to analyze and say that, hey, this ethical aspect should be taken care, and how it can be taken care, because everybody will agree that it has to be taken care, but the point is that how. And I'm seeing that change happening, and then on face of it, I feel that it looks difficult, but then with the time horizon, I'm sure it can be taken care of.
Okay. Alexa?
Well, I'm gonna take a contrarian view here. I guess like what I'd like to happen is the same thing with nuclear technology. Like obviously, when you have something powerful as AI or whatnot, like you can use it both ways, and that's always this game of cat and mouse. But I really hope, looking currently, the companies that are working on this AI safety alignment interpretability stuff are, I guess, Deepmind, OpenAI, Anthropic, a couple of companies. So it's definitely the case that we are investing a lot more time into developing these algorithms, making them more powerful, and less so in making them align with human interest, etc. So from that perspective, we could be pessimistic. But I don't know, it boils down to whether you want to be an optimist or a pessimist, because none of us can predict the future more than like a couple of months. So I like to think that like this will end up as nuclear technology. Sometimes we'll have some bad things happening, like hopefully not that disastrous, But then in the grand scheme of things, like in 10, 20 years, I like to think that we're going to be using it to help the humans augment our capabilities. And yeah, but we need to think definitely about the bad things that can happen. Otherwise, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the problems obviously is that it's very difficult to define what we mean by ethical AI. So the same report that I referenced earlier, just now, it said that it's difficult to define ethical AI because it's all contextual. It depends on, the culture that you're in. The same question might be seen differently in by two different people, by two different types of, regions, organizations, governments, and so on. And obviously, at some point, we would have to have the sustainable human goals and basic human rights to be embedded within all AI systems. Because the same report says that, yeah, you can say, let's just put the genie out of the bottle, okay, and then let's get all this development, let's kick it into high gear, and then we'll catch up later on. But apparently, what's happening is abuses happen, and then it becomes very, very difficult, if not impossible, to fix these abuses. So the big concern really is that at the development stage itself, we are not talking about it centrally. And the other thing this report says is that there are other things that are sort of influencing the development of AI. For example, global competition between countries like the United States and China. Apparently, they will influence this field more than ethical considerations. So again, I want to ask you, what your thoughts are on this. Alexa first this time, and then Sanket.
Sure. So I guess like having too many regulations in place is also not good. Like you mentioned that we should have like ethics and everything. We definitely need to think about it and have it like somewhere on top of our head at all time. But like too much regulation is also not good. And I will give an example. I guess EU with GDPR and like laws such as that. I think that's that's at disadvantage of European Union compared to China, which is on the other part of the spectrum. I would say, so we need to balance those two because if Europe, for example, is to develop a super ethical AI and nobody cares what Europe says, then we have a problem again. So it's a delicate trade-off between regulating and implementing all of those ethical considerations into our algorithms and into our systems. But like on the other hand, you have to kind of be competitive with others. So I guess it's a global problem, and it's a problem of syncing everybody like globally, everybody being aware and aligned with the same mission. Otherwise, I think it will not work that like in practice. It's a nice theoretical statement, but like, yeah.
We'll get into specifics in a moment. But first, I want to get in what Sanket has to say.
Yeah, so I feel that the ethics and regulation plays a lot, and the important point, Venkatesh, what you made in the beginning is that the regulations clearly drives the way adoption happens, because ultimately, if the adoption is not happening, then the hype around technology will just die down, right? So adoption has to be there, and for that to happen, the law of the land plays a bigger role, because what happens is that when you talk about development, right? Development might happen in one location, but then adoption happens in other location. So you have to make sure that the development and the adoption is always in sync, and that's where the regulation is required. And what we are seeing is that every region has their own regulation, and that is where the question comes in. What Alex also raised is that how do I make sure that I am compliant sitting in Mumbai with some regulation which he might be seeing in Serbia, right? So as of now, we are not seeing a common minimum program which has to be developed across the globe to make sure that what we call as AI for good in India stands true in other regions also. And if that program comes in, right, then the development can be in link with that, right? Like what we are doing in climate, or we are doing with sustainability. Like COP26 happened just 2 weeks back, and there all the countries have come together to commit or pledge to a common goal. Something of similar sort in AI is not yet happening. Every region, if you just Google it out, every region has their individual laws, but then we are practically seeing that some law contradicts some other regions. And that is where the confusion says that I'm good in India, but I cross my shore and I'm bad, right? So how that can be true? So that is where the global thing is required.
Yeah, but I guess it's a problem with human values as well, right? Like some values in certain countries are different. When you come and do
Exactly.
that, like apply those values in some other like culture, it's unacceptable. So that's the problem.
Yeah, the great cliche almost is that between the West and the East, the West focuses more on individual rights, the East focuses more on group rights. And I don't know where that places you, Alexa, in Serbia, but yeah, I mean, what you guys said, gave rise to another question, which is, Sanket, you said the government makes the law, the government regulates the sphere. But of course, when you have technology, it has no borders, right? And it moves at the speed of light. And governments take years to catch up to a problem that, was solved, that came up like 10 years ago. So who should make these regulations is the question again. Should it be government? Should it be technology companies? Should it be AI folks, that is AI researchers, people in the AI field? Should it be people across all walks of life? Who should be in the regulation business? Again, I'm going to come to you both, Sanket first and then Alexa.
Yeah, so I feel as far as technology is concerned, right? I would say the technology folks and specifically the researchers should be given precedence here because they are kind of seeing the future, right? What is going to come out in 2 years or 5 years? That is something the research community knows very well. So if we rely on somebody who's not linked with that kind of a stream, right? If we rely on government, because most of the time we see that government regulations more than often are retrospective, but here we are talking of regulations which are supposed to be prospective 2 or 5 years, right? So I cannot say that something happened and then I create a regulation, then it's the cat has already gone, right? So typically the insights have to be taken through the community, through the technology community, through the researchers, but then government should put their stamp on it so that it becomes a regulation, right? What I'm coming to is that it's not one man's job, but it's a collaboration where the researchers should be giving the insight and government should be putting the legal framework on top of that to support the law of the land. And that's how it's a wonderful collaboration which could happen, right? And that will actually give confidence to the enterprises also, to the industries also, because more than often we see that enterprises or industries often feel that, hey, I can implement this, but then will government allow me to implement this and scale it across, right? Then that fear goes away if this kind of a ecosystem builds up.
Okay, actually, Alexa, I'm going to insert a thought into this before you respond, which is, you have the government making laws, then on the other hand, you have the AI community saying we should be involved in it. And then you have the company that's formerly known as Facebook. It instituted its own Supreme Court, right? So, would you be in favor of some kind of global committee? So it would be not beholden to any particular company or a government, probably instituted by a university, we don't know, but comprising of AI researchers, people in the AI community, but also from the field of humanities, legal studies, philosophy, engineering, medicine, every part of the human domain. Do you think that such a committee even is feasible in the first place?
So I guess like forming such a committee would be as hard as forming a global government, and we haven't seen something happening like that. So yeah, I'll just kind of make an analogy there. So I'm not sure whether it's correct either, like the ideal solution, because maybe it's better to have a decentralized, let's call it that way, decentralized solutions where you have multiple like centers of power, and then they are kind of collaborating, trying to find the solution. I don't think the centralized solution would be a key here. Like if blockchain taught us anything, that's that. Yeah, we should go decentralized here, I'd say. But like when I say decentralized, I do not mean everybody should have an equal like vote, in the sense that people who are experts in ethics, people who are sociologists, people who are in tech should be the ones to kind of have, I guess, more impact because they have like the necessary knowledge and expertise in those fields. But I'm not sure what I agree with Sanket on the thought that we should have only tech experts deciding. Like we definitely need to have people who are experts in sociology, ethics, and those related areas to this subject. But not anybody, obviously. Just something that's very related and relevant to this topic, I guess.
Yeah, I'm going to hold on to the idea of such a committee happening at some point. I mean, all it really requires is one company to say, we're going to do this. Okay, let's tackle a slightly different kind of question. And before that, I want to talk about what is known as the great AI tradeoff. And I'm quoting here from a passage from this book by Melanie Mitchell, who is an AI professor. And the book's name is Artificial Intelligence, a Guide for Thinking Humans. And she says in it, and I'm quoting, should we embrace the abilities of AI systems which can improve our lives and even save lives and allow these systems to be employed ever more extensively? Or should we be more cautious given current AI's unpredictable errors, susceptibility to bias, vulnerability to hacking, and lack of transparency in decision making? So, Sanket first, and then Alexa, unpredictable errors, susceptibility to bias. I'm sure this is something we see on a daily basis, right? Vulnerability to hacking, lack of transparency. Every AI technology we come across seems to be a black box, right? So what would you say? I'm not even asking you from the perspective of someone who represents a company. No, just generally as someone who's involved in this field.
So Venkatesh, I would say that the technology, even though it's growing at a horrendous pace, but still the ethics and the other pieces are still to be handled, right? I don't see that happening, because right now we are purely kind of concentrated more on how the technology can improve, but how that can be humanized, right? That aspect is getting missed, and that's exactly what she is also mentioning, that while the technology is growing, but then for anybody and everybody to adopt within their day-to-day life, I would say we are still not there, right? We are taking good strides towards it, but then yes, I would personally, and again, this is not my company's view, this is my personal view, that this is something which we still need to be thought about well, of which all domains we can have, right? Like and again, we cannot generalize this. What we are seeing right now during the pandemic in the healthcare sector, AI really helped. How the vaccine came out so quickly, right? The simulation and everything happened in AI, and AI really helped. But at the same time, there are so many other aspects where typically AI, the same technology is not mature enough given the domain, right? So we cannot generalize it, but then we'll have to handle this from subject to subject, how exactly or how much amount of penetration the AI system is mature enough to allow into human lives.
Okay, Alexa, before you come in, I want to toss in another additional question, which is, till what extent should humans be required to be in the loop in different AI applications? Can you envisage, pardon me, a future where the machines are going to be monitoring other machines? Just to put it in a very Terminator kind of way. I mean, should humans be involved at every step? Is basically the question.
Should I start with that one or the previous one?
Actually, you can start with this and then maybe go back to the previous one.
Sure. So again, let me just say that this is also, all of this is my personal opinion. I'm not representing any company or whatnot. So human in the loop or not? Well, it depends on the application, and I think we could all agree on this. If we had like a application of somebody or something should remove the radioactive waste, I guess we can all agree that we do not need a human in the loop there. We need an autonomous robot, or at least somebody operating the robot remotely. Like, we do not need human there specifically because it's dangerous, I guess. It's a whole spectrum, I guess, depending on the application. Somewhere we want to replace humans completely, somewhere we want to augment humans. And I guess the most applications I see currently, we need to augment humans, kind of make it complementary to what our abilities already are. So yeah, like that would be a brief like explanation. For example, self-driving again, in theory, over the long horizon, I also don't see humans in the loop, because I guess machines with correct infrastructure can be much better and less error-prone compared to humans. So that's another example of an application where we do not need like a human in the loop. Whereas on the other hand, let me give a opposite example. If we were to convict a criminal, we should not do that based on a black box algorithm. That's for sure. We need to have humans in loop there. And I'm afraid that I'm already I read some papers on this topic where in certain states in United States, I guess elsewhere as well, people are using black box algorithms, so neural networks to make some decisions automatically without the option for that person to kind of complain against the decision. So that's scary. Yeah, and you mentioned, sorry for making a digression here, but you mentioned that all of AI algorithms are black box. It's actually the case that just neural networks are mostly neural networks, and they are mostly useful nowadays. So that's why we're saying they are black box approaches. But many other industries are using some more classic machine learning algorithms, which are more interpretable, but then again less powerful and expressive compared to DNNs.
Yeah. That kind of brings me to another thought, which is on the idea that machines can be moral. Can we design moral machines? Do you think we are there at this situation where, forget machines, but programs? Are we at a stage, if, I know I'm putting you in a spot here, but are we at a stage in the progress of this field where we can have moral machines? I just want to reference this, the very famous case, right, of Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. The first law saying that a robot cannot harm another human being either through activity or inactivity. That's the first law. The second law is a robot has to obey a human so long as that rule doesn't clash with the first law. And the third law is a robot must protect itself so long as it does not clash with laws 1 and 2. So, I just wanted to toss that in there. I know it's a big cliche in this field, but given the fact that Apple TV is streaming foundation, and there's this great focus on the possibilities of technology, I thought I should ask you that question. Are we there yet? Moral machines. Either of you want to start, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll go on this one, right? So I think I would say we are there in some sense. We are not there in some sense, right? If I if I lean on some technological jargons, right? So there is a concept of called reinforcement learning, right? Now, what you typically hinted is if you have to implement through an AI, a reinforcement kind of a scenario has to be there. Now, there are scenarios where a reinforcement works, right? If you talk about how warehouses are managed, right? You have so big warehouses or big machines, and they operate almost autonomously. They will take the goods, put in the right rack. Order comes in, they take out the good and take it to a dispatch center. Now that's an end-to-end scenario where the machine is handling each and everything, right? There are scenarios in the healthcare, right? We have seen remote surgeries being performed purely through AR, VR, and the machines are directly involved in that, right? So there are scenarios where typically it has grown, but then I would say there are a lot of scenarios where it is not yet grown. And even if it grows, if you talk about algorithmic trading, right? Now, if you allow algorithmic trading to go unattended, what will happen to the economies, right? Because it will the algorithm will try to optimize and maximize the profit for each and every instance, and it might not be good for the economy or for the stock market, right? So while technologically you can probably change some nuts and bolts and make it happen, but then again, will that be feasible in a human scenario? That is something which needs to be seen.
Okay, Alexa, moral mission.
Yeah, I guess I guess the current state of algorithms, like anybody who knows how these algorithms work knows that we need to supervise these algorithms. They are as good as the data, and because mostly we are current state of algorithms are mostly good at perception. So all of this AI topics stories are kind of missing the point, because we are still not developing the true cognition, and we're just having perceptual machines. We are good at this part. RL agents are really good at some specific niche and specific problems, such as games or some constrained environments. But other than that, we are still far away to even be discussing it.
Okay. The other thing I want to talk about is, we've spoken about how difficult it is to define ethics. We've spoken about different whether humans should be in charge of AI or not, whether machines can do it, whether there's morality that's possible in machines, and obviously we can go industry by industry and talk about different ethical issues because there are plenty of them. But I think I want to end this conversation as well. So I'm going to invite you both to make some final comments about where you see your role personally in the development of ethics in AI. And interestingly, there is this one problem I read, right, which apparently in philosophy and in these humanities schools, this question is often asked. The famous trolley experiment, right? There's a trolley that is going down on a rail, and then it's going to hit 5 people. But then, if it's diverted to a different line, it's going to hit only one person. So, will a machine kind of decide that hitting one person is preferable to hitting 5 people? And apparently, so there was this poll created, and it was sent to hundreds of people, and most people said yes. It's a good idea for this trolley to hit this one person so that it can save the lives of 5 people. But the very same people who said yes, they also said the other question. They also said they would not buy a car which would do that. So that's the twist. So I just thought, that's probably a useful thought on which to kind of say that, yes, when it comes to creating rules and laws and ethics, not just AI researchers, but probably every representative of human discipline has to be there. So any last thoughts? And before I come to any last thoughts, there's also this other story, right, of Isaac Asimov. Again, he writes in this short story Runaround about this whole 3 laws of robotics. So it features a situation where a robot is following the second law, and it moves towards a dangerous substance, at which point the third law kicks in, and the robot moves away because it's believing the third law, at which point the second law kicks in again. So it traps the robot in an endless loop. I just thought it's one more entertaining kind of example. Are we there? Are we in this situation where machines are much more intelligent than these robots in this story? And last thoughts. Alexa, I'll start with you and then come to you, Sanket.
Yeah, I definitely say we are not because like the troll experiment, the question is what should a human do? Like it's a very complex like a question that has been discussed for, I guess, many decades. Even I guess it's even I don't know, it's an old problem, but like what should we program the machine to do? Like how would a human like react? We could make the machine replicate human behavior, maybe like in some period of time, but like it's a hard question to answer for sure. It's an open-ended question. We need to agree as a society what's the best response, and we can program the robot to do exactly what the society thinks is appropriate. I think that's theoretically totally possible. So yeah, I don't think it's an unsolvable problem. It's unsolvable as much as it's unsolvable for humans. Like it's as hard for machines as it is for humans, I guess. As for the question on how I can influence like the having more ethical principles being ingrained into our algorithms, I guess I can do whatever, like through my community, the AI Epiphany, like a small advertisement here from my side. Basically, yeah, I guess I can have a positive impact by just being a good role model for my community. And yeah, that's a first thought that popped onto my mind.
Fantastic. Sanket, what your thoughts are and what do you think?
Yes, I feel that, I don't want to generalize again. I mean, I'm very optimistic on the technology. We've been working on it for the last 12 years or so, right? And I would put technology, I would firmly stand behind the technology. And for the simple reason that what happens is that technology is only that good depending upon the person who is actually developing it, right? So you cannot just say that because of one or two instances where the technology kind of went bad, things are not going to improve, right? I would rather put some principles around it, right? Like principles of fairness or principle of reliability, inclusivity, privacy, or transparency and accountability, right? Now, these are if you take this as a dimensions on which you evaluate your technology, then putting that across different business domain. more than often you will find out that some of the business domains will have tick mark across all of this, and some of the domains would be still not there, right? And that gives a good idea to a concept what we are referring to as an explainable AI, right? So for the domain where all of this gets tick mark, then I know that whatever has been developed is very explainable, and I can fully rely on it, and I can have machine run or end to it. For the domains where this is not getting tick mark, only maybe 3 of this are getting tick mark, then I know there is still some more work to be done. And I would relate this back to your earlier question, human in the loop, right? That is where I would need human in the loop, right? So then it becomes inclusive as a technology, and everybody can rely, because right now the dilemma or the question comes in because not many people understand what is happening behind the technology. Through this framework, if we start releasing back to the normal community in simple English, hey, this is how the technology is going to help you, right? Then it will really help, right? I'll take you back to more than a century, right? When the industrial revolution began, right? Today you can see a lot of advertisements at that time which were released saying that why a horse is better than a car. You don't need to take a horse to a fuel station. You don't need to service a horse, right? That time people felt that yes, horse is still better than a car, right? But today, do you feel so? No, right? So we have to give time. And why it happened, right? At that time, industrial revolution was based on certain principles, and you started explaining those principles, saying that how combustion engines are better, how pollution will go down, how you can go quicker, right? That same thing would happen in AI also, I feel, right? On some principles which I just mentioned, right? Every organizations can come up with those principles, and that will make the technology more adaptable to a common person. And that will be the pinnacle, because right now you cannot have AI been adopted only by technologies, right? It's not meant for that. If you start explaining the technology, then all the negative connotations around that will go away, and people will be more receptive and more adaptive. And that's how the overall good for I'll bring that to your topic of AI for good, right? That's how AI for good happens, right? Be it climate, sustainability, health, whatever you name, all these principles are going to help convince the people how good AI is for the betterment.
Yeah, I mean, and ultimately, I guess it boils down to training the human. Every human being involved in programming, writing the code at every level. So
Yeah.
actually, I was going to end it here, but I'm going to ask you like both of you a quick question, which is, you both represent huge corporations. Do you see in your experience that every human being is being given the kind of instruction to keep ethics at the center of their work? Do you see that happening? Alexa and then Sanket.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the company. I mean, all of the big tech companies are like pushing for that. Definitely, there are like internal trainings. But when I was working back at Microsoft, we had like internal trainings on ethical issues, etc. So yeah, I guess it's happening. I'm just not sure how much is it impacting daily life of a developer. Whether after like the person finishes with those trainings, whether that person goes on and actually can implement and use those like the new knowledge acquired from that training and kind of make the systems more ethical or not. Like there's this discrepancy of what the company culture is pushing for and what the actual daily work of a developer looks like. And yeah, I guess that's problematic.
Right. Sanket?
Yeah. So I would say, see, fundamentally, how human behave is that you push a human to do something and they will revolt. I mean, it's fundamental to any human behavior, right? So I would say it boils down to the culture, and culture cannot be pushed on somebody. It is about you seeing that happening actually around you, and that is where the leaders play a lot of good role, right? Specifically, the organization what I represent, I see that because the leaders here actually walk the talk, right? Their say-do ratio is much higher. There's a concept of say-do ratio, what you see and what you do. If that ratio is higher, that means yes, you are actually imbibing that culture through your actions, and imbibing a culture through actions is a lot more efficient than through some bullet points which get thrown at you through email, right? That doesn't work, and that's exactly how the culture are going to change, and I do see that happening.
Right. I think on that note, thank you both for being so candid and going along with these questions and giving your thoughtful answers. And of course, if there's anything you would like to say, you want to add any final comments, go ahead. But Otherwise, we'll just bring this conversation to a close. And this is, of course, just one of many conversations that have been happening, that continue to happen, and will continue to happen in the future. Thank you so much, Alexa.
I just want to add a simple thing, if it's possible. Like first, I think we need to get comfortable with the notion that AI will not be interpretable. Like I guess humans are also not interpretable. When you ask a human why he or she did something, they can give you some explanation, but that's not necessarily the true answer. The same thing we have with GPT-3. Like sometimes it just kind of outputs some nonsense or something that's like you know. So I guess that's the first thing. And the second thing you mentioned that like as long as we have good humans that have like a good ethical background are programming AI, I guess that assumes that AI itself will not be autonomous and have its own cognition. So like it doesn't matter whether good humans are programming AI. It matters whether those humans understand like the underlying principles of how that thing works. And I guess that's more of an AI alignment problem than ethics and good humans. So I guess those are two things I wanted to kind of.
So I'll just add one final thing, Venkatesh. Looking at the time, right? So I would say for developers, for adopters, for common humans, right? I would say look at this technology like climbing a mountain, and climb that mountain not for the world to see you, but for you to see the world, right? So just I would say you can relate, and then Alexa also can relate that all is good, all is well, and it's just a matter of time, and all of this, whatever negative connotations are there, I'm sure that those will be ironed out very, very soon, and all will be well.
It's an extremely optimistic note on which
Absolutely.
to end the conversation. But I guess optimism is wired into all technologists. And yes, of course, your point is well made, Sanket, and also your point, Alexa. And the other point, of course, is that once the artificial mind, so to speak, starts developing on its own, as it already has in many instances, there is no telling how it is going to develop, and where the field of ethics itself will be. So a lot of questions, a lot of compelling answers, and lots of food for thought. So thank you so much again, Sanket and Alexa.
Thank you.
Thanks, Venkatesh. Thanks, Alexa.
We kept the most intriguing conversation for the end. We hope you found all the guest speakers, as I did, and conversations interesting, insightful, and stimulating. And we would urge you to please let us know what your thoughts were, what your takeaways are in a feedback form. You can write us also at events@boomlive.in. So that's events@boomlive.in. Big thanks to Renjil T and Shiva Roy Chaudhary to have driven all this right from the beginning. Now, there might be one thing you all might have missed during the last 2 days of conversations. That is the intersection of AI and extreme speech, content moderation, and misinformation. We touched upon it, but we didn't have the time to go in depth on it. That's because we're creating an entirely new and different summit. And this is for January 2022. Stay tuned and look for us, look for the announcement. We'll tell you exactly when that is going to be. And for the moment, on behalf of the entire team at Boom, I would once again like to thank you all the speakers and attendees for gracing this event, making it a success. We'll see you again next year. And till then, this is me, Venkatesh, signing off. Thank you. Goodbye and stay safe.